Welcome to the MStar podcast, where we engage in meaningful conversations that display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life. This episode highlights an important ministry and their heart for serving others. So let's learn more about what's happening in the life of your church community.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MStar podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Mayhew, and I have with me today the legendary, the mythical, the Herculean Tyler Mock.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a lot. I don't know that I deserve all that, but hello.
Yeah. Hi. How are you doing, Tyler?
I am good. I'm good. It's nice to be sunny today, so
it is
excited
indeed
about that.
It is indeed. So, we're here to talk about middle school ministries.
Yeah.
Specifically, Highlife.
That's right.
Right? Kind of synonymous there.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, how long have you been at MStar? Tell us a little bit about yourself in general, I guess.
Sure. I started coming to MStar when I was in second grade.
Okay.
So 12, 13 years ago, I think, because I'm 20 years old.
Okay.
If you do the math there, I think that's 8.
Mm-hmm.
In second grade. I'm not sure. And then I started helping at Highlife kind of between my sophomore and junior year of high school.
Okay.
So I've been helping Highlife for probably about 4 to 5 years. And then I became a full leader because we don't really do it anymore because we do a lot of mixed stuff with high school at the moment. But if that changes, I'm sure we can bring it back. But high schoolers would, some of them, if you wanted to, could shadow leaders, and you'd be a quote unquote sidekick,
Yeah.
And I did that. But then when I was a senior, I became a full leader. Honestly, because we needed leaders, and I was a senior, and they were like, "Well, close enough." And I was 18, so I was he's technically adult.
Yeah, there we go.
worked out. But and so I took that class all the way through, and then I graduated, and now I'm the interim director, until they find someone here. So doing that since June.
Okay.
And I've been an intern. I skipped interning since 2020.
Oh, fun year to start.
Yeah. Well, it was it was in the summer. And so that was when they in 2020 in the summer, they thought it was about to end. And they're and they started leaning back on things. And then I was just kidding. And so we were able to do a day camp thing because CDC or whatever was you can start doing these day camp things, and then I think they kind of walked back on that one towards the end of the summer there, but we were able to do a day camp, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
And then I've been interim since June of last year. So.
Nice. So about half a year and some change now.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. For those not in the know, first off, middle school ministries is called Highlife.
That's right, and MStar Middle School.
And MStar Middle School on Sundays. Okay, that's great. Highlife confused me when I was new to MStar because I'm that's obviously the high school ministry.
You know what? That's a great point.
Right? So any of you following along, Highlife means middle school. Just sever that connection.
I never thought about that, but that actually makes a lot of sense.
So what does middle school ministry look like at MStar?
Yeah. So specifically on Sundays, we the students come at about 7:00, and then we have Foursquare and ping pong.
7 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay.
No way.
Yeah.
No offense. No way I'm getting up at 7 a.m. to go hang out with some middle schoolers. I love them to death, but
that would be...
I'm sorry, but
Yep.
Unless it's camp, I will do it. That's for sure. But 7 p.m.
Okay.
And we hang out for a bit, probably about 20 minutes, and then we get into a game. We usually do either one or two games, depending on how long they take. Some favorites are dodgeball. And this is more MStar Middle School, but they love Sharks and Minnows. I don't know.
Oh, that's a classic.
Yeah. I was I remember loving that, but they they ask me like every week, can we play Sharks and Minnows? I'm like, no, we played that literally last week. So we play a game, and then we do worship, and then we have a message, and then they go to small group for about 30, 35 minutes is usually how long small groups are. Okay. Which is a little shorter than the high school one. But, you know, high schoolers probably have a little more attention span there. And that's not to say like these middle schoolers, they can totally get into it and get deep and get serious, you know, but again, they're, you know, a max like 13 years old. So they're a little bit shorter attention span there. So 35 minutes is about our sweet spot for a small group. And that's decided by like grade and sex. So you got like 6th grade girls, 6th grade boys, so on and so forth. And so we try to have about 2 leaders per grade per gender. But you know, we have a few that's 1, a few that's 3. So it's like, give or take.
You work with what you got. Okay. Nice. And that's Morningstar Middle School Sunday evening? Or is that
MStar Middle School is 11 a.m. services? Got it.
So that was Highlife on Thursday.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
If we're talking about MStar Middle School, our other weekly event for middle school, it's 11. I like to start at 11:12 for when we actually get into it. Yeah. And also at Highlife we start at 7:22.
Oh, nice. That's a good.
I don't know how I ended up starting these times, but you know, I've held to it for some reason.
Easy to remember.
But 11:12.
Okay.
And then we played 2 games. And then on Sundays it's a little different because you know, it's more a Sunday school rather than like a youth group type event. I don't know if event's the right word, but I usually have them read a chapter of the Bible. But currently we're going through Jude, which only 1 chapter. So we're not reading the whole thing at once. Plus there's a lot in Jude. So it takes a while to get through that. But so they'll read a passage, and then depending on what I've planned for the Sunday, there's usually like 3 types of Sundays that I do. One would be they make like a poster, and I usually have them like draw me a picture, explain what you just read, so on and so forth. Or I make like a list of questions that they fill out, or or more like a message, like I'll speak a lot. I do that one a lot less on Sundays because I just find it more useful and interesting to the students to like get them to do the work, you know? Giving them that responsibility and also like letting them grow and like teaching themselves through like actually reading the Bible, you know? Because I don't want to like, you know, I can speak on stage, but like, if they just take that to heart, like I hope and I work towards always speaking the truth, right? Yeah. But say I was someone that didn't do that and they weren't, those students weren't prepared to know, like to read the Bible and things like that. Like I could say something wrong and they just take it at face value. And so teaching them to like, know the Bible and actually like dig in and read it, I think is super valuable. There's actually a lot of what Jude's about. So that's pretty cool.
That's good. Yeah. No, I know like even as an adult, like I can go to hundreds of Sunday services, but there's such a different way of just internalizing the message of the Bible when you're actually engaging with it yourself, as opposed to someone is even totally accurately explaining it from the stage. Yeah. And at that young age, you're looking to build like those kind of foundational building blocks because you don't know where they're going to, you know, if they're going to be in Salem in 1, 10, 20 years.
Yeah. So that's something we actually talked about 2 weeks ago, two Sundays ago, because this Sunday was Family Sunday. But in Jude, it talks about like kind of false teachers a little bit. And I was telling them, I was like when you guys like grow up, a lot of you will move away. Maybe not all of you, but a lot of you will probably go to college somewhere. And if you're looking for a church, like you need to know what is true, right? Because if you're going in and you just accept whatever the person talking on stage is saying and they say something wrong, like that's really dangerous,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so building from a young age, right? Like you said, like that foundation of like actually digging in and making sure like what is being taught is true, I think is super valuable. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great life skill for someone who follows Jesus.
Yeah.
Like we all need that. We all need that. So I was baptized in 6th grade, so I was in middle school, but I barely remember anything of like what I was like. I don't remember much of what was going on. How does like middle schoolers' relationship with God like compare and contrast to like as an adult? Like how do you approach, do you even approach those differently, or like?
Yeah. You know, it does obviously always varies from person to person, but in a more general sense of middle schoolers, like I think as you grow up, you know, it gets a little more complicated. And I think that for some of these middle schoolers, like it's so simple. It's like, do you believe in God? Yeah. Well, then I believe what he says and I'm gonna follow what he says. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you get older, it's like, there's so many like aspects where you're like, oh, but what if I do this? Or like, well, God's not really saying this. Maybe I can get away with it, you know? But like in middle school, those middle schoolers, these younger kids, even younger than middle school, right? Like I think there's more faith. And that's that's obviously like broad. That's not always true for adults, not always true for middle schoolers. But I think there's more blind faith. I don't know if blind faith, that's not the right word. More like biblically sound faith. Faith
you know? Like a child, right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
where it comes from.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
and so I think in terms of following God, like those who are interested, like really want to. And I think that sometimes, you know, we kind of overlook, I don't know if overlook's the right word, but like overlook children and middle schoolers of like what they're capable of. Because I've seen, like, I've gone through a group of middle schoolers, I've been teaching them, and like they are willing and open and totally smart enough to go deep into following Jesus. And I never want to underestimate these kids because, you know, like as someone who's also not even that old. Like I can think back just like a couple of years or like probably a couple months and be like, wow, that was really stupid. Why'd I do that? It's like, but just because I like maybe have done something stupid doesn't mean I'm not smart enough to understand and follow God, you know? And they'll make mistakes. I make mistakes, but ultimately they are like wanting to follow Jesus. And if we as leaders can provide like show them how and show them what God says about how to do it, like then I think we're set.
Nice. No, that's good. That's good. I'm even thinking like right now, our middle schoolers who believe have the same Holy Spirit in them that we have as an adult.
Right.
And I mean, the way you're talking, it sounds like we almost don't even want to underestimate the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
It's like in those kids and he can teach them these lessons in a way like God is a way better teacher than you or I. I mean, no offense. I hope you don't take offense to that.
That's super true.
But like there's just a way in which I think I could definitely see that where middle schoolers are able to grasp concepts that would like blow our mind, even when, you know, maybe they're not ready for calculus, but like the calculus of
Is anyone ever ready for calculus?
No, that was flashbacks. So what are some ways you've seen God working in these middle school students? Like you've talked about how they have like this blind faith. And I think that resonates a lot with what Pastor Louis was talking about last Sunday.
Yeah.
But what are some of the ways that you've seen work in Highlife and middle school ministries?
Well, recently, I think the most obvious to me is some of the 8th graders are going on the mission trip. And so I've seen them been working for the garage sale that we have. And so if you don't know, anyone that doesn't know, the garage sale that we hold, well, if you don't know what that is, we hold a garage sale.
Yeah.
Very big, whole church almost.
Huge garage sale.
Massive.
Yeah.
But our student ministries team, those who are going, on the spring break missions trip, help set up and plan the garage sale. Okay. So that's open to 8th graders through 12th graders. So I've seen a lot of these 8th graders been working these past couple of weeks at the garage sale. And I've heard from Kate, who runs the garage sale, like she's told me like, yeah, they're working really hard. And it's really awesome. And so seeing their work ethic and their enthusiasm to just like serve has been really cool. Because I don't know that when I was in 8th grade, like, well, I didn't sign up for the mission trip in 8th grade. Yikes. But like, I don't know that I ever really served all that much. And so it's really awesome to see like that there are middle schoolers that are serving. And I've even seen kids that aren't 8th graders just like come and help at a garage sale shift before. And I was like, whoa,
that's awesome.
I never would have done that when I was in middle school. But you're better than I am, I guess.
That's great. I see I think I see like a couple things there. Is one, these middle schoolers are so like aware of the goodness of God that they're willing to do the boring work, right? Which as something like as an adult Christian, sometimes it's hard for me to do the boring, air quotes, boring work to even further my relationship with God. It's so much easier to think about the mountaintop experiences like, oh, but I got a worship night coming up. But, do I do the doldrum of trying to make sure I get up on time so I have time to read my Bible and not be late to work? Yeah. Or do I do the doldrums of like, well, let me plan and try and get to bed early enough that I have the energy to even, right? It's tough. But these middle schoolers clearly have that heart where they're willing to do, because I mean, there's probably some fun to be had, but it's a lot of manual labor pricing work. No one's going to be like, setting up a garage sale. That's that's the cherry on top right there.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's someone out there.
Maybe.
It's not me. It's not me.
If you are that person, let us know, because we have a big garage sale to set up here.
Boy, do we have the chance for you. I agree. Cool. Yeah, I think like there's a willingness there that can sometimes be lost.
Yeah, it feels, even when our lives get more, air quotes, busy and important, it's just sometimes easier to push aside the less flashy stuff.
Well, yeah. And like they're in school, like, I don't know exactly, like maybe like 35, 40 hours a week.
Yeah. On
top of homework and whatever sports they do. And, and I think it's easy to sometimes look at a middle schooler and high school and go, oh, well, they don't, like, I work all day and what do? It's like, well, they're in school like 8 hours a day. And then they probably play a sport, which is like 2 or 3 more hours. And then, if they go to church, which obviously our students do, that's another like 2 or 3 hours. Like they're busy,
Yeah.
It's busy. And, there's some 8th graders, I think there's only like 2 that actually work.
Yeah.
I got 2 8th graders that one I know for sure works at McDonald's, and I'm like, that's crazy.
On top of school. Top of
I'm like
Highlife and middle school.
Yeah. And I know, I think sometimes even I fall into the trap of like, oh, well, maybe they're not as busy as I am. But it's like, you stop and think, it's like, no, like they are doing a lot. But they're still willing to help with this garage sale. So yeah.
No, that's great. If any of you middle schoolers are listening to the podcast,
dude, and I'll get them on it.
Yeah, do it. Thank you for helping with that. And that's just so awesome that you're even like, if you're going on the mission trip or if you're not, just helping with that is just such a wonderful and God glorifying thing to do.
Yeah.
I think. Some people have done a lot with youth ministry. Like I was a camp counselor for some time, so I've had some experience, and some people don't have like any experience. Maybe they didn't even grow up in the church, came to faith as an adult.
Right.
Someone who's never like looked inside youth ministry even before,
sure,
at any level. What would you say to them that might like, they might not be entirely aware of, or they might not know, or like what's one crucial observation you would want them to have about middle schoolers or about how God works in there?
I would say that our ministry truly is teaching them about Jesus. We play games, we hang out, we like act really silly and dumb, but like ultimately our goal is to show them Jesus. Right. And some of that is just hanging out, right? Some of that is just like showing them what it looks like to live normal life while following Jesus, right? Because following Jesus isn't just at church. It's not just, at Highlife, but showing them like what it looks like in our lives to live out following Jesus. And so part of that, right? Like we go and we like sometimes like we'll go to our students, right? We'll go to their sports events. We'll pick a few of them up, go to, I don't know, the Croc Center or something, whatever.
Yeah.
Like that's just living normal life, but we can still do that and show Jesus. And so sometimes it's easy to look in and go, well, they're just like playing a game. They're just having fun. But it's like most, if not everything we do is showing Jesus to these students. That is what I would say.
Yeah. I think that's just that model of ministry too is very Jesus-like, right? Because in the Bible, we get, a lot of like Jesus is, public teaching and, a lot of conversations he had with just the disciples, but the things they're recording are, like the teachings or like the big events.
Right.
But what is easy to sometimes miss is not realize that like there's these 12 guys living with Jesus for 3 years, doing basically everything together.
Yeah.
And it's just it's a lifestyle ministry in a way. I don't know if that's the word, like best wording for it, but like when you're talking about going to these sports games, like, I don't know if Peter, played sports, but Jesus would fish with him, I'm sure, and they clearly knew each other's family. Like, Jesus is like, hey, I think it was John, take care of my mom as he's passing away on the cross. And so like, there's definitely this deep relational connection that's not just bound to teaching, and it's not just bound to going to like the right events that I think Jesus exhibits. That you guys sound like you're doing a really like you're modeling your ministry at Highlife and middle school after that.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So what is kind of changing pace a little bit? What is something that you think is like maybe like the hardest part of middle school ministry in our current day and age, like an obstacle or anything like that? Is especially like, I know I was a 6th grader. Oh golly, I don't want to do the math. Some time ago, right? And things have just, rapidly changed even since I was a 6th grader, and I'm not that old. But what are some of the like biggest challenges or obstacles that you see?
Technology, for sure.
How so?
It's progressed so much. Like it's so easy to just get information. Like when I was in middle school, like even if I had I didn't have a phone until I was in 8th grade. But back then, not that long ago, like it was much harder for me to like see news and see like things on Instagram people are posting and like influencers or whatever. Like that just wasn't as big as it is now. And so I guess social media as well in general. And a lot of our parents don't let them have it, which I fully agree with. But it's like, I think even without that, like just the internet in general, it's so much easier for them to gather information. I think it's like information overload. They're taking so much in, and I don't know that they have learned yet how to process it healthily. And so like, a lot of the like really, what's the word? Like, I don't know, important, for lack of a better term, topics that you see on the internet. A lot of people talk about, especially like, like sexual sins and things like that. And so I think, and in fact, usually the opposite of what the Bible says, right?
Yeah.
And so it's hard to like change that mindset, especially for those who haven't been in the church. Like if these students come, like we get new students and it's hard to like show them what God has for them in store. And so, you know, it's a touchy subject, right? But it's really important to talk about. And I think sometimes even like I'm wary to talk about it with middle schoolers, but it's like, no, they need to hear it.
And like you get like a Thursday night and a Sunday morning where you're actually able to teach truth to them. But if they're like anyone with a phone like me, it's like, and they're in school, like they go all day through school, consuming, learning, trying to, you know, add new things to their brain. They go home if they're on like social media or the internet, even if they're just like reading Wikipedia, they're learning, adding new things to their brain. And it's like, it's almost like, to use a really crummy analogy, it's almost like if you were just to eat all day, just snack all
it's too
day.
Much.
And then, when you get to the good food, it's a lot harder to appreciate it because you're just so full. Maybe. What do you do? Like, what's your response to that? I'm not imagining you have like a silver bullet. Here's how to do youth ministry in the United States. This works every time. But like, what actions are you taking to counteract that?
You know, it's I have to go back to like thinking in what I was. Currently, I don't have a small group of students, but when I had my own small group of students, like I think it comes down to having conversations and breaking down like untrue beliefs that they hold. And I don't hold it against them. Like I'm sure there's things that I believe that it's not true, right? And someone will come along and be like, "What the heck are you talking about?" I'll be like, "Oh, you're totally right." But just actually having the conversation is so important. But I think the biggest thing, like, honestly, just talking about it. There's such a stigma, especially around like sexual sin, which I think is like a really big thing at the moment. It probably always has been, but currently, you know, like it's so easy to like go online and, you know, like find pornography and things like that. And and the age, there's like a statistic. It's like 95% of people have seen it by age of like 10, you know? And it's like, so there's a fairly high chance that all of our students, if not almost all of them, have seen it. And it's like, it's a harsh reality to accept because I don't want that to be true. But as long as we're open and actually willing to talk about it, there's growth to be made. And so I would just lay out what the Bible says about it. And if they're not willing to accept that and willing to change, because ultimately it's not up to me. It's up to them, and it's up to their relationship with the Lord and the Holy Spirit working within them. But as long as we as leaders at Highlife can lay that out for them and get them thinking, then God can do the rest. You know, He's better than me. So
He's better than us all.
I think it's important that we talk about it, because if you don't talk, you know, God talks about like confessing our sins and things like that. And it sets you free. But it's like, again, if we don't talk about it, then they'll just sit in it. You know, and when you got a group of 8th grade boys and you bring it up and everyone's like, sitting there with their arms crossed, and you're like, I'm like, listen, I get it. You probably, it's shameful. You think it's shameful. You think you're like super, like no one is going to be the same as you. And it's like, nah, dude, like so many people have been there. And then you get that one student that is willing to share, and then everyone opens up. And Yeah, man, it's just getting that one student to open up, especially, and it happens more often at camp, and that has to do with just like, you've been there all week, and you're more open and more honest. And, but I remember when I was, I think 2 great camps ago, my group 8th grade boys opened up the most that they'd opened up ever. And I was like, whoa, I was not ready for that. Cause I was just like, the day would be so rough and I'd be going to a small group. I'm like, oh, it's going to be so tough. And then they just, God has different plans than me and knows more than me. And it's like, oh, okay, this is a great small group. We talked about so much and we were so honest and so open. And it all starts with the students being willing to share. Yeah. Which starts from you being willing to be open and start that conversation. Yeah. I went through high school, and one thing in the group I was in, we often had conversations where our leader didn't really have to talk that much because he had taught us how to converse and be open with each other. He'd lead and direct, but with middle schoolers it's a little different. And so we, as a leader, you need to direct that conversation a lot more. And whether it doesn't even mean that they don't have good things to say, because they do, but they're just scared to share it, especially the boys, which obviously I have a lot more experience in leading small group. Makes sense. 8th grade boys, they're 6th to 8th grade boys. It's like they feel it's bad. I don't know if bad is the term to share, but it's embarrassing. Yeah. But it's not. It is, but it shouldn't be. Yeah. And once you do it and you realize that it's not, then it's not. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but I think you kind of understand.
I think I understand. When there's that shame element involved, it feels like you kind of have to keep it to yourself. Yes. But I had a friend who was talking to me and a couple other friends and was talking about, in her eyes, a distinction between shame and guilt. Yeah. And where guilt is this positive physiological response that God has given us to let us know when hey, we are walking out of sync with him. And then shame is just this negative response. It's from the enemy that just wants to keep us from receiving the healing that God has for us.
Yeah. One of my friends he was talking to me about some stuff. I'm not going to share it because it's not mine to share, but he was saying, and I felt really guilty and I know I shouldn't. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, God doesn't want to feel good. And I was like, no, we don't want to feel shame. You should feel guilty. What you did was sinful and wrong. Yeah. Feel guilty, but repent. Right. Guilt, without guilt, why would I ever repent? Yeah. Why would I ever not sin? Right. Because if I don't feel guilty, what's the point? You know what I mean? And so, positive, something that God has given us to understand what we have done is against him, and that's, it's a question of morality. Where does our morality come from? And so just having guilt, not shame, guilt is good. And do enough guilt, you'll be open. That's for sure.
One of the things that I like that you're highlighting is I led college young life for several years. And so I've done a lot of work with college students, and conversations like this are hard with college students and they're hard with adults. Yeah. But you're having these kind of conversations with middle schoolers. Yes. And I think that just serves to illustrate the point you're talking about earlier, where middle schoolers are capable of so much more than we can give them credit for sometimes. Yes. And it's easy. I don't know. I don't do a lot with middle schoolers, but I feel like I'd be almost intimidated. Oh, maybe they're not old enough to have these hard conversations, but it sounds like not only are you having them, but they're fruitful and they're thriving and actually a vital part of the ministry. Right. And so I think that just really highlights, I think, a good approach for us adults who maybe don't have, haven't seen that, is just, set the bar high and let them rise to it.
Yeah. And if they don't meet it, then we'll meet them where they are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then we raise it further.
Yeah. You got to
but it's like,
build them up.
There's no downside to setting it high.
Yeah. Because
if they don't meet it, it's just like, all right, well then we'll work with what we got.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to expect that you are capable of this. And if you're not, that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's okay.
That's great. Actually. It's just a good opportunity so much for growth. So a demographic that I'm not a part of, but is obviously very influential in the lives of middle schoolers is parents.
Right.
Parents, right? And I imagine there's at least one parent listening to this. And maybe you have a middle schooler, or maybe your kid's about to be in middle school. Right. And a lot of this probably applies to high schoolers. There's a lot of difference. 13 and 18 are very, very different ages. Yeah. But what would you want to say to parents for them to just really internalize and how to help better raise their middle schooler to follow Jesus?
You as a parent are the number one discipler of your kid, not us. Mm-hmm. We'll do what as much as we can, but ultimately you should be the ultimate discipler of your kid. Mm-hmm. That's not to say don't bring them to Highlife and MMS. Yeah, do that. Mm-hmm. But it is our job to teach them when we have them, and the parents, you'll be with your kid much more than we ever will. In fact, maybe we are with them more in middle school, which I don't think is actually ever true, but let's say it is.
Yeah.
That's still only 3 years of their life. You're going to be in their lives forever. Mm-hmm. And so if you are working towards discipling them yourselves as well, you'll set them up for success. Because if you just leave it to us, right, that's only a fraction of their time living like Jesus. But if you're discipling them all the time in your home, in your car rides and whatever, then you'll set them up for success more than we ever could. We'll do our best, but a lot of it is on the parents, man. We're a team. We're a team. It's not, I think sometimes I've seen intimidation of oh, you're taking my kid away from me because we spend so much time with them possibly. But I just want to reiterate, we're a team. I am here to disciple your kid and show them what it looks like to follow Jesus and give that to them as much as I can. And you should be as well. And so I understand. I totally get it. But I would just say don't be intimidated by our leaders, because they do really want what's best for your student, and that's following Jesus. And so if you work with either, if you communicate with them and you, because all it is, they're so open to meeting and talking with parents. Sometimes it feels like it's a struggle as a leader, but it's it's both ways. I'm sure I could be doing more to reach out to, include them and stuff like that. But yeah. We're a team. We're a team.
No, that's good. I think, I'm going to absolutely butcher this, but there was a study done by, I want to say Barna. This is just some group of people who do studies,
Great. I was like, I have no idea.
There's lots of people who just make a living doing surveys and studies and all that. But they were doing a study. They do studies, I think they're a Christian organization and do studies specifically about the church frequently. Cool. But they did a study based on of children who were in the church. So already having parents who were Christians, bringing them to church, or in at least most of the cases. And of those people whose parents were already in their life, or at least already bringing them to church, I think the number one significant factor on whether that child stayed a Christian after they left the house, whether going to college or elsewhere, was having other adults involved in their life. And that sounds exactly like what you're trying to do with the, lifestyle ministry, like speaking the truth to them, even working with the parents as a team.
Yeah. Like the comment saying like, oh, it takes a village. Well, it really does. Like it's they need multiple sources in their life of people that follow Jesus. And so, that's a cool study. I that makes sense.
Yeah. I'll try to find it. I'll rapidly Google things and see if I can find it.
Gotcha,
I hope I can. Maybe I'll throw it in the show notes. But I think one other thing that you said that struck me, you said a lot of things, but just recently, was you said you are your child's number one discipler.
Yeah.
And I liked how you said are, like present. Like, I think there's probably a case to be made that a non-discipling, like if you're not trying to be involved, that you're just discipling your child in the way of non-involvement. And so it's almost like you are your child's number one discipler, whether you like it or not. Like live into that and train them up in the way of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a father's train your children up in the way of the Lord, so they don't depart. I feel like that's a proverb. Off the
top of my head.
I clearly don't either. But so stepping back from the parents to our church body as a whole.
Yeah.
What can we do as a body here at MorningStar as the family to really just come around and create a place where middle schoolers just thrive with Jesus?
Interact with them.
Okay.
Don't be scared. They're scary. I get it.
Yeah. You
Honestly, dude, the middle schoolers are scary, man. But I kind of, even again, going back to like having multiple people in their lives, like even if it's one interaction with the middle schooler, like just talk with them, just interact with them. Like maybe they'll, a few of them might shut down.
Yeah.
I don't know. They could.
But you never take the chance then.
Right. One thing I always told my group was like, how do you know if you are the person that is going to help? Just ultimately it's the Holy Spirit, ultimately it's God. But how do you know if you're going to be one of the people that helps them lead to Jesus? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, if you sit here and you never got up from your chair, would you ever find out? No. Okay, but if you go and you talk to them, even if they reject you, then you're like, that's ultimately better than sitting and doing nothing, right? Because you might not be that person for them, but we should always try, right? And I think that kind of falls in, and it's not exactly the same thing what we're talking about here, but like how, like maybe you going and talking to a middle schooler and interacting with them will like change their day, you know? Also, I would say, just like be involved with our events if you want, like we always could use the help for camps and day events or things like that. And if you're looking to like love on the ministry, could always use some help. Yeah. So I think it would be really cool to have more, especially like parents of the students, but it doesn't have to be like that. Or just adults coming and helping at like our day events, just to like show that there's more people outside of Highlife that follow Jesus here at MorningStar. You know what I mean?
And
like,
care about them.
Like they know that.
Yeah.
But showing that to them would be really cool. So those two things.
And there's definitely something to be said with being like present with your time, just especially as a kid. That's just a very easy, visual, relatable way to understand, like, yeah, they care about me, right?
Yeah.
Going out of your way to help at camp or, I don't know, with the garage sale or Highlife, whatever, if you have lots of time or little time, I think that's just a good visual indicator and something that's probably great for them to see. Let's think a little more personally here. Why do you even do student ministry? Like, there's so many different levels of ministry, but you are doing middle school ministry and you've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. Why?
The baseline, I mean, I'll get more into it, but the baseline is just, I really love working with students. Adults, I love you and I care about you, but sometimes I find it frustrating. And with students, even though I feel like it's backwards, I find it much more like it just makes more sense to me of teaching and like working with students than it does with adults. I don't know. I'm only 20, but still, like sometimes when I'm like talking with an adult for like something like theological or whatever, and I'm like, man, if this was a middle school. But I just have a big heart for middle school. So when I was in middle school, I came to Highlife probably about 50% of the time. I don't know. It just wasn't my thing. I didn't have a good time. And that's not to say like Highlife was great. And there was a lot of students there that had a great time. I don't know, whatever reason, I didn't really enjoy it. And so I want to give these students like, I just want them to have a good time, you know, like I want them to enjoy their time here. Cause if they're enjoying their time here, they will learn so much about God. Cause like, because I wasn't like, I didn't want to go, but my parents I would show up. Like I didn't care. I didn't pay attention. So if they're willing and they're wanting to show up, right, they'll learn a lot more. And so my heart is just like giving them that opportunity to learn about Jesus. Because I had the opportunity, I just didn't take it. But I can still build an environment that wants them to. And so, you know, I look like when I think of my life, like I fully see myself working with students for the rest of my life. Like I don't see myself not working with students, man. Like I just love it. And, you know, let me think here.
You're good.
What's the question again? I'm like,
just why do you do Highlife?
Right. So specifically why I do middle school ministry over high school ministry. No offense, high schoolers, but middle schoolers are much more fun. Kind of boring sometimes. That's okay. Because there are people that don't think that way. Don't think the same way that I do. But I just love hanging out with middle schoolers. They're so fun. They're so fun. I like people would like, I've had adults like show up, they're like looking and I have to like, wow, this is crazy. I'm like, I guess so. You know, I think it's pretty, like, I think it's pretty cool. like they're so loud and wild. I'm like, yeah, what about it? Like, I don't know. Just my mindset from middle school is like, this is great. Like, I'm so glad that they're having a good time. I'm so glad that they're having fun. And, I'm such like an introverted person. Outside of events, like when I get to a place, I'll go out. Once I'm home, I'm just like hermit crab. But like, so that fits really well with these middle schoolers because they're always so loud and so crazy, and it's good. I have those like 4 hours of energy once I get to a place, and then it's over, you know? And so like,
welcome to being an introvert, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like I have that burst of energy and it's just like the perfect time slot for these middle schoolers, you know what I mean?
That's good. Yeah. No, that's good. It's always encouraging to me to hear people who are not just like doing, but thriving in like their ministry and just in their natural rhythms of it. Like even you're talking about like, you just like physiologically are well equipped for student ministry because you got this 4-hour burst.
Sure. But even like camp. Like, we've talked about this at camp before with like our leaders, like eventually your like battery runs out and then you're just fully leaning on the Holy Spirit. And so when I am feeling like even outside of camp, when I am feeling drained, when I am feeling like, dude, I can't do this. It's like, I'm leaning on the Holy Spirit. And honestly, that's when it's most powerful.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not using what I've got, but I'm fully using what God has given me. I had something coming back to why I do it. There's so many verses in the Bible. I'm gonna pull it up because I had pulled it up earlier that talk about just like teaching and building up children.
Okay.
One of the ones I wanted to look at was Proverbs 22:6 says, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they're old, they will not turn from it."
There we go.
Yeah, like so simple, but we need to start these kids off now. That's not to say, obviously, when they're older, like people come to faith when they're all the time, right? Like that's not does not exist, but it is much easier when you build a foundation. And that's what we're doing here. That's what the kids ministry does. That's what the middle school does. That's what high school does. Because then once we're sending them off, the parents are sending them away to college if they go out of state or whatever, if they go out of, or even just like Oregon State or UBO. Like if they have a foundation, it's going to be much easier for them to follow God. Like I don't know the statistic, so I'm not even going to try.
Okay.
But I know it's a lot of people step away once they get out of high school, right?
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but I don't know exactly the statistic, but it's up there. It's up there.
It's probably very high.
Anyway, but like, I would like to think that those that don't have that foundation.
Yeah.
And it's something kind of, we've talked about as the student ministries team of like, okay, we don't have as many students as we had like 5-10 years ago. But it seems like the students that are like coming out of Riot, the high school ministry, if you didn't know, not Highlife, as Jacob thought.
Nope.
The students that are coming out of Riot and following Jesus is like a greater number, I think. Like, I could, when I was a senior in high school, there was about, I don't know, I could probably count on my hand, maybe a little bit more, one hand, how many other seniors there were. And when I was a freshman, we had like the biggest class out of all the classes, right?
Interesting, yeah.
And so we were reaching more people, but we're reproducing followers of Jesus. And I think now when we look at it, the number of graduates is maybe a little smaller, or the classes look a little smaller, but those that are there are far more following Jesus. I talked with someone recently, they're saying that the normal percentage of kids in the youth group that are following Jesus is about like 30%. But I look at my youth group, we look at Highlife, I look at Riots, I look at Rob's youth group, like it's more than that. It's like I'd say at least like 50% of our students, if not more. Good. And, maybe that creates, the problem that creates is maybe it's a little harder for students to come in.
Maybe. Yeah.
But those that stick around, those that stay are far more prepared when they leave. And whether they like actually say they're following Jesus or not when they leave, we've given them structural things. And I think that's important. Like I can think of like people that I went through high school with that maybe wouldn't say they follow Jesus, but I know that they have learned so much that, it breaks my heart. But at the same time, I'm not super worried. Like I'm obviously like have worry and I have like all this
and
like makes me sad and I pray for them, but I know that there's so much built up in them that God's going to work in their lives.
Oh, that's good.
And so, I don't even remember how we got here, but
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So kind of wrapping things up a little bit. First off, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah,
and this
of course.
is so good. I
love talking.
I love our ministry, our student ministries here. Highlife is just such a good ministry, not just to our students, but to their families and to our whole community in Salem as a result. But let's say, someone here wants to get involved. Maybe you're listening and you're like, hey, I want to get involved on whatever level. How, are there any qualifications they need? How do they find you, contact you?
You can contact me. You can go to Morningstar's website and it has a list of our staff. You can find me there. My name is Tyler Mock, and it'll probably have my email and number, things like that. You can message me whenever. It's okay.
And I'll put those in the show notes.
Will I respond in the morning? Probably not, but I will. I will respond to you. I promise. Yeah. But as far as qualifications, you love Jesus.
Okay. And you're willing.
And you're willing.
That's dope.
And you probably, I would say, agree with our doctrine as a church.
Yeah. That's pretty important.
And that's kind of it.
Yeah.
You're willing. You love Jesus. And you are sound in our doctrine.
Yeah. Which is on. I think our theological statement is on the website. It's pretty fundamental, basic stuff. Like, you think Jesus was the Son of God, important stuff. Okay.
Those things, and whether you want to help out as a small group leader, which is probably the biggest ask, or you want to help out, just maybe you want to come to Highlife every week and stand at the door and greet people. Great. Yeah. Let's do it.
That's great. We need everyone. It takes a village, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's so great. Thank you for coming on, Tyler. Family, those of you who are listening, if your heart is stirred in any way, I hope that you reach out to Tyler. Again, his contact information will be in the show notes. It's on the website. Any of this, middle school is such an important ministry and such an important time of life. And if you love Jesus, you can do it. So again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you have an absolutely wonderful week. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again on the next first or third Thursdays. And before I forget, we're having a bit of troubles finding our podcast via search on some of the bigger podcast providers. So if you want to subscribe and also leave a review, I would like it if you rate it 5 stars. I don't really care that much.
At least this episode,
right? Yeah. Tyler wants you to. But if you do that rating and subscribe, that will help the algorithms know that, hey, our podcast is actually a thing, and find it a little easier via search. So again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you later. Have a great week, family.
Thanks for tuning in to the Morningstar Podcast. Join us again next time as we display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life. Thanks for tuning in to the Morning Star Podcast. Join us again next time as we display God's handiwork and encourage you to live a Jesus-first life.